What a delight to be with a dear, dear friend, Bill Federer, a tremendous patriot, tremendous Christian. We've had him on many times before for years and years. I remember him 22, 23 years ago when I wasn't even here at Southwest Radio Church, and once I came, got to meet him personally, and we're going to be speaking together and today about a really important topic, and especially today, it's an important topic. And that is American exceptionalism. I would be the first one to admit that America is far from perfect, but I'm glad I'm in America. I've traveled around the world and I've been a lot of places, and every time I come back, I say, thank you, Lord, for America. Bill, thank you so much for being with us.
Larry, great to be with you.
You know, we hear things like the 1619 Project, and we hear all these people are ripping down statues of American heroes, and Black Lives Matter tell us how bad America is. I believe America is an exceptional place, and I believe you do too, and you've got the facts to back it up. So why is America such an exceptional place?
Well, thank you, Larry. I talk about these in a couple books, and one is called Miracles in American History, Volume 1 and 2. And so the Volume 1 has battles and conflicts in our country's history where there's a crisis, they pray, things turn around, and the second one has all the revivals in American history. And the revivals are important because they're based on people having freedom of conscience. So in Muslim countries, they want you to, the Sharia Muslim countries, they want you to believe, and they really don't care if you're convinced in your conscience if it's true or not. It's outward compliance. And if you don't show this outward compliance, you're punished by the Sharia government.
So in other words, even if you don't agree with them, as long as you say you do agree with them, that's what they want.
Yeah.
And Islam means submission, doesn't it?
It does. And then communist countries do the same thing. They want you to get rid of your faith and be an atheist, and they want you to comply. And then you look at the kings in Europe during the Middle Ages, where they said whatever they were, Anglican in England or whatever, but you had to believe the way the king did, or you were persecuted and you fled. And William Penn said, force makes hypocrites, 'tis persuasion only that makes converts. This idea that you're a spirit-minded body, God made your mind, He wants you to understand the gospel, and He wants your heart to make a willful, free will decision to follow Him. He doesn't want you to say that you believe simply because you're afraid you'll get an ear cut off or something like that. But your mind and your heart are not involved in it. And so the early Baptists, the separatists there in England, one was Thomas Helwise. He dies in the Newgate prison, and he would write pamphlets that were really powerful, so they did not allow him to have any writing instruments. And one of his friends brings him a bottle of milk. They didn't feed you in the prison. You had to have some friend that missed you and brought you food. If the friend brought you some money, you could bribe the guard to put you in another cell where there's nobody dying of smallpox, Now
this is in England?
Yeah, right.
Where they have a king?
Yes.
Where they drink tea with their little pinky up? Really big shot, king, queen? Wow, that's disgusting.
And so they didn't feed you, so a friend brings them food and a bottle of milk, but instead of a cork, it had a wad of paper. And the guard puts it in the cell, he eats it, and while what he does is he takes the wad of paper and unfolds it, and he takes a splinter and he dips it in the milk, and he writes out his pamphlets. The milk dries, it's clear. He folds up the paper, sticks it in the empty bottle. His friend comes and the guard takes it out, the friend takes it home, and the friend unfolds it and holds it above a candle. And the heat of the candle turns the milk brown. And then they see what he wrote, they typeset it, they print it, and so the early Baptists would call it the milk of the word, right? But one of his pamphlets says, the king is a mortal man and not God. And, if we obey the king's commands, that's all he can ask for, that the king shall not be a judge betwixt God and man. And then that became part of the Baptist doctrine. And so one of the early Baptists in America is John Leland. And he corresponds with Jefferson and Madison, and he says virtually the same thing, that men are accountable to God for their conscience. He says, if the government can be there on the day of judgment and answer for your conscience. Fine, believe whatever the government tells you. But if the government's not going to be there on the day of judgment, you're accountable to God for your own conscience. So in America, one of the things that makes America great is you get to have a conscience. You get to believe stuff because your mind is convinced and your heart makes a willful decision. Now, why is that important? Revivals. So that's why there's revivals in it. You can't have a revival with a government person coming in and says, we want to invite you to believe what the king tells you to believe. Of course, if you don't, we're going to take you out and kill you. Anybody don't believe? No, we all believe, right? When there's no government force, compulsion, then you're free to make a free will decision. Wow. And so that's why we see these revivals in America, because the founding fathers fled this persecution in Europe, came to America, and they put it in to the different state constitutions, this freedom of conscience. So that's one of the things that makes America great.
Well, I think that's so beautiful because, the way I feel, I believe that the Christian way is the right way. And if somebody's a Muslim, I think he's on the wrong path. However, if he comes to my country, I'm not going to force him. I'm going to give him tracts, and I'm going to love him and maybe try to eat with him and so on and so forth. Now, of course, if the Muslim tries to attack my religion or tries to change America, I'm a little unhappy about that. So we in America, we can welcome atheists, Muslims, all kinds of people, as long as we can continue to have freedom of religion, because that's so special.
Right. So William Penn said, okay, there's freedom of conscience in Pennsylvania, but to hold office, you had to believe in God, right? And there's what they call the preservation of Christian liberty. And so it's the Christians that allow the freedom of conscience. Other countries and other religions don't allow that, right? The very strict Hindus there, they want to, ride motorcycle gangs, come into a village and, we'll kill a Christian if they think he ate some beef, And but it's the Christian umbrella that allows for all these other ones to come in. But if they end up being in charge, there is no longer an umbrella. But what makes America great is we have this freedom of conscience. A couple other things is you get free property. You get to own private property. Wherever there's a king, you never really own the property. It's always going to be conditional of you staying on the nice side of the king. In communist countries, Lenin said socialism is a transition phase to communism. Marx said communism can be summed up in one sentence: abolition of private property. Now, the Bible believes in private property. When they go into the promised land, God divides the land up and gives property to each family permanently. It's theirs. And if you own property, you can accumulate stuff, and the Bible calls that being blessed. Right. So if you have property and you have stuff, you can be moved upon in your heart to give away some of it, and that is called charity. You cannot be charitable if you don't own any property. What do? Steal from somebody else and give it away? Now you're a thief?
Yeah, isn't that why the Bible says, thou shalt not steal? The idea is if you're taking my property, it's things that God has given to me. And really, theft is, well, it's an argument with God. I don't think you should have that nice car. I'm going to take, kind of thing. So the American way is just right down the line with the Bible.
It is, and you don't realize it as much till you contrast it with others. So we had a revolution, France had a revolution. The motto of the French Revolution was liberty, equality, fraternity. Fraternity was their word for socialism. It's the group, it's the collective, it's the state, it's the mob. And equality in America was understood equal treatment before the law. Equality in France was everyone having an equal amount of stuff. And if the fraternity, the group, the collective, the mob thinks you have too much stuff, it can use the power of the state to take away your stuff and kill you.
Now, the French Revolution, the American Revolution were pretty much coterminous at times. I mean, when it happened, the end of the 18th century, but the French Revolution led to violence, but the American Revolution produced liberty. Right,
so theirs was about 15 years after ours. We had a Great Awakening revival prior to our revolution. France had Voltaire prior to theirs, and he was an atheist. He made fun of Christianity. He wanted to eliminate any... During the French Revolution, they went through French culture with a fine-tooth comb, and they got rid of done in the year of the Lord. So they made 1792 the new year one of the Republic, and they used that method for 15 years until Napoleon finally scrapped it.
Yeah, didn't they get away with the 7-day week because it was too biblical? God rested on the 7th-day week. Would they have a 10-day week or something? And it didn't work, did it?
Well, they had a 10-day week. Each day had 10 hours. Each hour had 100 minutes. Each minute had 100 seconds. And so they would have these decade months. And then, of course, at the end of the year, the math didn't always work out. Mm-hmm. And so they had a couple extra days that they just sort of, would change from year to year. So these are sort of the cleanup days, But they had this decade, and they had all the names of them. They said 10 was the number of man because you count with 10 fingers. And they made every measurement in France divisible by 10. They called it the metric system. But anyway, so in America, you get to own private property. You get to be charitable because you can give away some of your private property. In socialist countries, the state owns it. The state controls it. And in America, you get to choose your career. In other countries, like in Cairo, Egypt, where it's a Muslim country, the tradition is that a Christian cannot hold a job higher than a Muslim. And so the Christians would dig around in garbage to eke out a living every day. Right. And because they couldn't hold a job. The system did not allow them upward mobility. I talked to some immigrants that had come to America, and they go, wow, our grandparents came over here, and they were thrilled. They could collect garbage, and they got paid for it, right? So they went into the garbage collection business. But I mean,
they did a good job, I think, because we have competition. One garbage collector charges too much, somebody else comes, charges a little bit less, and does a better job. And so he gets good business. So it's good for the product, good for the population, good for everybody.
It is, and but the career paths in Muslim countries for Christians is limited. And then in India, they have the caste system, which is still culturally observed. 7 major castes. The highest is the Brahmin. They're near divinity. They get special treatment. And then the lowest is the untouchables, the Dalits. And their job is to clean the sewers and the toilets and the streets. And even if they do a really good job, they cannot graduate and move up the ladder. They are permanently stuck in this. And ironically, they say even if the people become Christian and they, in India, and they marry, they still want to check out which class the family was in before they became Christian. And they still sort of culturally observe, oh, well, you're, the Brahmin. But the upward mobility for the Dalits people is extremely limited. And and then I talked to somebody who was a Christian in India, and they said they kept getting passed over for promotions. Right. But in America, you can choose your career, and you can work hard and advance in it. In Europe, like in Germany, the government pays for everyone's education. It's really nice, except if you don't score good on a couple tests, the government channels you into career paths. And a couple years later, you say, you know what, I really want to be a doctor. Sorry, you can't. But I want to go over there. Sorry, you can't. We will not pay for it. You're stuck. And so, yeah, it sounds nice, but the government controls what you're going to do the rest of your life. In America, you get to make the choice. You get to take the risk, right? But you get to this freedom. So, and then you get to marry who you want. I was reading about Beethoven and how he was giving piano lessons to the daughter of a Czech duke, like, the Czech Republic. And they fell in love and they wanted to marry, but she was not allowed to marry him because she's the daughter of a duke and he's a piano teacher. And so he writes a couple sonnets, for her or whatever. But here, the system didn't even allow them to, but in America, you can marry whoever you want, right? So you have freedom in America. I tell people that the ultimate is the word citizen. The word citizen is Greek. It means co-king. And so you're a citizen of America. You're a co-king of America. And so you get to be more or less the king of your life. And then all of us together are more or less the king of the country. And so our founding fathers, for all their human faults, they gave us a present. And that present is you get to be in charge of your life, and all of us together are in charge of the country.
I love it. And like I say, I've traveled a lot of places. I'm glad I'm here. We've got about a minute. Why then all the hostility against America? Maybe that's for another program, but just tell us a little bit about that. If America's so good, and it really is, why are people trying to destroy it?
Well, we're the number one promoter of the gospel around the world.
So this is a spiritual battle then.
I do,
mean,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, definitely.
We wrestle not against flesh and blood. And this is what's happening. It's not about President Trump or about anybody. It's about the Lord. It's about the Bible.
Mm-hmm. And you think of it, lust is never appeased by yielding to it.
Yeah.
Well, the LGBT agenda is a lust-driven agenda.
Yeah.
They're never appeased by getting anything. They want more. They want more and more. They want your children. They want you to be happy giving them your children. They want to call you hateful if you're not happy if you give them there's no appeasing them. And it's this consuming thing, and it always leads to persecution of those that don't embrace it. And they keep changing the goal line. So even somebody that was on their side before, they've moved on to transgendered. And if you're like the lady that wrote Harry Potter, she said, no, there is a male, female, now she's being attacked.
Right. I mean, what was her name? Rowling, I think. And I don't consider her a right-wing Christian, but just common sense. Well, friends, we've got a couple of great books and two books, Miracles in American History, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And Matthew, our announcer, will come to the mic and tell you how you can get these really inspirational books.